So if during your daily life your ego is operating you, who's operating you at night then? Where are these dreams dreams come from?
Look, at night the dreams, we cannot control our dreams. So that's like one of the areas where this mechanism can operate. But for instance, in the slip of the tongue, also we can say that the regime of the ego is broken for a little while because the person loses control of what they're trying to say. So the shadow, or this compensatory opposite, which is like trying to keep the deceiver in us honest, will try to get through the cracks and the creaks of the regime of the ego, the force that protects the person against seeing these aspects of themselves. So the slip of the tongue or the dream, both are areas where the person has no control or limited control. Of course you have situations where the ego is so powerful that even in the dreams they would tend to try to re-engineer the dream to not be exposed to that compensatory process.
How would that happen in a dream?
Well, you would get that person's...
What kind of dream?
You would have people often we would confuse these dreams with lucid dreaming, where the person would be able to change the dream. For instance, change the architecture of the dream as a way of limiting the influence of the unconscious or the shadow in the dream, and not letting the shadow compensate one. So for instance, one could change a stairway into another object. The point being that those are symptoms of a person that is becoming yet more intensive with that defense mechanism, to not listen to this force in your life that is trying to show you that you are not in balance. And the dream is just another area where this unconscious or the shadow can compensate you. But the body becomes another area where people have limited control, and hence where this mechanism can enter. So we get that symptoms are actually ways in which this mechanism can try to keep us honest, so to speak. You see, so many symptoms are actually there to help us out of the rule of the ego, which is ever more bent on control and not listening to life. You see? So this compensatory mechanism is a life. It operates in life.
Outside of the ego.
Yes, it's as it were a higher self-corrective principle of which the ego is also a subject. Yes, and the ego does not want to be a subject to something higher. The ego wants to be the one that is subjecting others. So it's a very difficult process to get the person, the group, or the system to come to a point where they are able to surrender to this higher law, which is there to correct the ego, to correct the conscious, the person. You see, and that's why I am so adamant about this idea, because we see whole systems, not only individuals, whole systems that achieve to disregard these signs and these hints that come to us, and achieve to then keep going into ever more one-sided forms of development. And the problem with this compensatory mechanism, or this universal law, is that it is superior to the ego, meaning the ego cannot submit it. So what happens is that when you don't listen to these signs in your life that are there to help, to correct you, they keep getting more and more intensive and unbearable until they can completely neutralize you. And there are many examples of this. When one starts to understand this, it's almost impossible to not see how it's operating. It's constantly operating in all systems. I had a dream lately of, a while back I posted a few dreams regarding Michael Jackson, and I recently had another dream in which a lady came to me to get me to show me Michael Jackson's things of his life before death, all of his stuff, and a lot of what was happening to him before he died. And then I told her in the dream, I showed her the unconscious like a storm forming. And that's a wonderful, actually, metaphor of how, when we achieve to keep disregarding this force we call the unconscious, all we do is we fuel its activation like a storm until this storm gets so huge that death can be the result. The unconscious is able to stop us, you see, and we're living in a system that has now built an ego-driven system, and a system of what we would call a worship of the ego, the sun. The sun is a principle of the ego, a symbol, a solar worshipping system where we have built up systems to protect us from that shadow or that compensatory mechanism. While all of these symptoms are a higher, coming from a higher level of the self trying to correct us. So, for instance, disease is to a very, very high degree is actually the shadow trying to compensate us. And it's very easy to see that the whole medical system is a way to remove those symptoms, remove the signals of the unconscious, trying to correct the system that is on a very, very dire path. So we have developed a whole societal structure to avoid listening to this corrective mechanism, with as result that all we're doing is conjuring up, stirring up a huge storm in the unconscious, which is able to really stop us in our tracks. There's another example that I recently read about of this, the Harvard professor that was arrested, and before this was widely reported in the press, that he shared that before he went to the White House, that he dreamed that he was arrested at the White House. You see, and we that work with the dreams and with this mechanism, that means that it's the unconscious was actually signaling to him that arrest was actually orchestrated in the unconscious as a way to signal to him that he is off beat. You see, and when we study the dreams, all the accidents, all the diseases, all the problems, so-called accidents, everything that we attract into